But with predictions, I don't like to go chalk, George. No one's going to remember if I pick the Ravens and the 49ers. So I decided to switch it up a little bit. And I went with
Welcome back to another episode of Georgeonsports with me, your host, George. And join me on today's show is none other than the main man, Sheil Kapadia, writer and podcast host at The Ringer. Sheil, thank you for joining the show, and how are you?
Of course, doing well. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. Playoffs about to get started. Coaches all over the place, retiring, getting fired, leaving. So a busy time in the NFL, but it's all good.
It's exactly that. The thing is, it's a great part of the season, but it's also a sad part of the season, just because obviously we know what happens after here. The season's nearly done, and then we have the off season where you're waiting around. And if you're a Colts fan like me, who didn't get to see Anthony Richardson play, you know you're anticipating that to come back. So it's a great time, but also a sad time. All right. With that being said, we're going to get straight into some of these matches for Super Wildcard weekend. I stress the word super. It's a Super Wild weekend for a reason. There are some crazy, crazy games with some crazy, crazy narratives. So we're going to get straight in to one of the first games that I think is probably the most anticipated game of the weekend. It's the Rams and the Lions. Now, for those of you who listen to The Ringer, you would have heard Sheil and Ben talk about some of these matchups. But the Rams and the Lions, for obvious reasons, has so many different implications. You've got both quarterbacks who essentially swapped teams. The Lions replaced Goff with, the Lions replaced Stafford with Jared Goff, and vice versa. So you've got Stafford on one side and Goff on the other side. Stafford went on to win the ring. Obviously, Jared Goff is doing good things with the Lions, now the number 3 seed, and the Rams are the number 6 seed. However, if there's one team in the playoffs right now who I'm terrified of, it has to be the Rams. And for me, I feel like what they're doing on offense with Sean McVay, and remember, Sean McVay wasn't even supposed to come back. He was supposed to be in a booth somewhere doing TV. And then to draft, Puka Nacua in the 5th round, Kyron Williams in the 5th round, and here they are, taking on the Lions in a very emotional and exciting matchup. What are your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I mean, you laid it out. It is kind of confusing. You're like, wait, who played for who before, what coach, and all the different storylines with this one. I think it's going to be a great game. I'm with you. I think this is probably the one I'm looking forward to the most. I mean, the big thing is like the Jared Goff, Sean McVay thing probably interests me the most, because even when Jared Goff was playing well for the Rams, no one was really giving him credit. It was like, Sean McVay's talking into his headset until 15 seconds left on the play clock, and Sean McVay's this incredible schemer, and Jared Goff's kind of like a robot out there. And then when things went south, I mean, McVay kind of, put the blame on Jared Goff. He didn't play him in the playoffs, and then they attach an extra first-round pick, basically, just to get rid of Jared Goff. And, I know Goff has talked about that since, and not thrilled about the way that ended. And who saw this coming? I mean, no one thought Jared Goff would go on to Detroit and be playing this well in this offense with the new offensive coordinator, and be leading them to, their best season probably in our lifetime. So that's going to be a juicy one. I have it, after this pod, George, I have to write my picks for theringer.com. And that's the one where I still don't know who I'm going to pick in that game. I was leaning Rams, but then part of me, when I think about it more, goes to the Lions, because I think these are two dynamic offenses. I think it's going to be a shootout. I think both offenses are going to put up a lot of yards, a lot of points. And one thing to keep an eye on, that Rams special teams is the worst in the NFL. So like in a close game, when you're looking at, all right, well, what could decide it? We always think offense, defense, matchup. Special teams, I think in that game could be a huge, huge factor.
Absolutely. And I think it's one of the most underlooked parts of the game. Obviously, you can score at any point on special teams. It happened a number of times this season. And that could be the very defining moment of that game. I mean, it can be the case where, a missed punt or return punt for a couple of points. It happens all the time. In the playoffs, it's win and in, and if you lose, you're going home. So everything goes, and it's all or nothing. And it always seems to be one or two crazy kind of plays, whether it be offense, defense, special teams during the playoffs, which defines, the way the team continues or goes home. So you said it, it's a crazy game. The narrative behind it is insane. The emotion behind it is insane. You talked about Jared Goff and McVay and the way things ended there. So that's one of the games that I just cannot wait to watch. But I think for me as well, on the Lions side of the ball, You've got one of the best running back duos in the league in Montgomery and Gibbs has just come on stronger and stronger as the season's gone on. Obviously, you've got good receivers. Sam Laporta is an issue for me because him being injured, I think he's already been ruled out, I believe, of this game. And that's a big deal because that's kind of like Goff's safety blanket. So it's going to be interesting to see how they go about attacking this defense. I mean, the Rams don't have the best defense in the league, but I mean, when you have a healthy Stafford who can pretty much do what he likes with the weapons that he's got, it makes an interesting game. But I mean, yeah, Rams are the 6th seed, Lions are the 3rd seed. It's going to be really, really interesting to watch. I can't wait to see how that one ends. But I will say the Rams, for me, are probably the dark horse team of the entire playoffs right now. And I will say as well that I can see a path for them in the NFC all the way to the playoffs. To the Super Bowl, sorry, I'll just say that. All right. 7th seed in the Packers and the 2nd seed in the Cowboys. Another ridiculously emotionally fueled game. Mike McCarthy, longtime Packers head coach, now head coach of the Dallas Cowboys, gets to take on his former team in the Packers. The Packers are traveling to Dallas. And for those of you who follow the sport well enough and you know about Dallas's record at home, in the regular season at least, they're 8-0 undefeated. This is a crazy one. Jordan Love, brought in to take over from Aaron Rodgers, who went on to the Jets, and he's done well. He's done really well, and I think he is pretty much their guy going forward. And you look at the Packers team, youngest team in the league, full of about 13 to 15 rookies, so many guys who don't have experience. But the thing is, they've all come in together, and I think that's what's got them to this point. Defense is, growing in confidence every week, except now you take on a Cowboys team who traditionally, when it comes to the playoffs, tends to fall off a little bit in terms of the divisional rounds. Dak Prescott has thrown less than 10 picks, like he said he would. Still, he's not getting the credit that people think he deserves. But the Cowboys are high-flying. Dak and CeeDee Lamb are doing historical things. Jake Ferguson, another great tight end who's helping the game out, and obviously got a strong defense. How do you see this game going?
Yeah. I mean, you laid it out well there. I think if I'm a Packers fan, I'm excited about Jordan Love in this offense. I think they can play well in this football game. Jordan Love has been way past what I thought he was going to be this season. Now, I thought he had a chance, but I thought it was going to be more. All right, he shows some flashes here and there, ups and downs. Like, man, you look at it, really, the second half of the season, he's been one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL, in my opinion, and it feels very sustainable. You can just see the game slowing down for him. He's making the right reads. He's operating from the pocket. He's making high degree of difficulty throws, and we knew he was a really talented guy. So if you're a Packers fan, it's kind of like you're playing with house money here. Like, you're just probably thrilled that, hey, we don't have to have a quarterback question after this offseason or after this season. And so I think their offense will play well. The other side of the ball, I mean, that would concern me if I'm Green Bay, because this Packers defense, I don't buy them. I haven't bought them all season. They made Bryce Young look like an all-pro in that game. Tommy Cutlets, remember, was running zone read all over him in that, I forget if it was a Sunday night or a Monday night game. And so I know they've had their moments since then. I do not trust them at all. Like, this could be a game where, where the announcers in the third quarter are like, Dak Prescott is, 20 for 21. I think he's gonna be completing a lot of passes in this game. Like, I have a hard time seeing how they're gonna consistently slow down Dallas. So I think it comes down to some of the randomness. Can you force a turnover? Can you sack, fumble, a deflected pass on an interception? Can you do something on special teams? Because I just don't think defensively they're going to be able to get those stops. So I think competitive game. I think the Cowboys are pretty big favorites in this game. I think the Packers offense is good enough to make this a competitive, entertaining game where we're still watching in the fourth quarter. But ultimately, I think Dallas, unless the flukiness happens, I think they've got a good chance of moving on.
Now, Mike McCarthy came out and said, "I'll let the media talk about the history and feed on that, and he doesn't care." But these guys are humans too. There's got to be an element of, man, I can't lose to the Packers. I was there. There has to be the element of, I want to beat them. Same thing for Jordan Love and the squad. I mean, you've got Aaron Jones, who's the only one who could essentially call him coach. A few of the guys there who played under Mike McCarthy. But there's got to be that element of, we can't lose to this team because of the narrative. There has to be that. I mean, I know they say otherwise, but there has to be, surely.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. It's one of those things that you say one thing in the days leading up to the game, And then when the game's over and like if the Cowboys win, then he can be more honest, or the players can say, yeah, we talked to him about this on Wednesday leading up to the game. But I understand it. I think when you're a coach, you almost never want the story to be about you. That's generally not going to be a good thing when the story is about you. So I understand him saying that. And listen, he had a long run in Green Bay. He won a Super Bowl in Green Bay. It obviously got stale. It got bad at the end. But I don't. As far as like divorces go in the NFL, it wasn't the worst one we've ever seen.
All right, Eagles Bucks. Now, Sheil obviously used to cover the Eagles. Obviously, Philly. You know a lot about what's going on over there. And I think it's fair to say the momentum has completely fallen off for these Eagles, these Philly Eagles, for whatever reason. AJ Brown, they had a conversation with AJ Brown about them not doing well enough and having to do better, and the onus is on them. Dare I say they've become a little bit predictable. And I'm not talking about the tush push because no one's able to stop that for whatever reason. But they have become a bit one-dimensional. Things have fallen a little bit flat. I know Jalen Hurts had a bit of a finger injury. How serious that is, I'm not too sure right now. And you flip the ball over to the other side, the Bucks who are the 4th seed, Eagles being the 5th seed. And Baker Mayfield, as far as I'm concerned, deserves his flowers. I mean, he's gone through the ring. He's gone through the ringer. See what I did there? Gone through the ringer. And for me, it's a case of he's got them to this point. He has played well. At times, he's looked like the old Baker Mayfield. Then at times, he's not shown up. But they are the 4th seed, taking on. They're at home as well. And if you look at one part of the Eagles' play, the defense, a really bad secondary, one of the worst in the league right now. You're going up against a guy like Mike Evans, who is bound to take the top of this team. So personally, I actually think the Bucks win this game, but I want to hear what your thoughts are.
I'm leaning that way too. Like I said, I'll put all my final picks when I'm writing later this afternoon. Sometimes something pops in my head and I change my mind at the last second. But I'm leaning that way for the reasons you mentioned. I mean, it really is due to the Eagles defense. I mean, not only like sometimes you watch bad defense and it's, hey, a corner got beat, or like the Eagles right now, they can't even line up properly. Like there's so much confusion with their defense when there's a simple motion or a shift or a different personnel grouping. It's just like there's mass confusion on this Eagles defense. And so I don't know how that gets fixed from one week to the next. I mean, this was just last week. Remember, in the first half of that game against the Giants in Week 18, the Eagles had something to play for. If the Cowboys lose that game and the Eagles win that game, they're the 2 seed instead of the 5 seed, which is a big deal. So they started their starters in that game, and all of a sudden, if you got up to get a snack or something and came back to your TV, they're down 24-0 to the Giants. And so not only watching it live is it bad, watching the film, which I do every week of the Eagles, is very bad. They're just so bad defensively right now that I feel like the Bucks as home underdogs really are going to have an edge there. And I will say this, Eagles offensively, I agree with you. It's gotten stale. It's gotten predictable. However, if they're healthy, they still have so much talent on that side of the ball. So sometimes in the NFL, even if the defense knows what's coming, if you've got AJ Brown, you might still be able to get a 25-yard gain. So there is a scenario where the Eagles win this game. And in that scenario, I think the offense puts up 30 plus points. AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, their offensive line. I mean, Jalen Hurts, obviously. They've got a lot of pieces on that side of the ball where, if they have a good night, if they're able to make some plays, that they could put up a lot of points and win this game. But just because of the defense, I don't think I can get there. I don't think I'm going to predict that.
Cool, I got you. All right, before we move on to the second half of the show, quick picks in terms of who you think might win. Just a one-word answer. Browns, Texans.
I got the Browns right now.
Dolphins, Chiefs.
Chiefs, reluctantly.
Bills, Steelers.
Bills.
Okay, and obviously we've spoken about the other games. Okay, as you would have seen, some of the coaches have been, relieved of their duties, namely Mike Vrabel, Bill Belichick, Ron Rivera, Arthur Smith. But I want to specifically talk about Vrabel. Obviously, he's been relieved of his duties, and there's a lot of talk about where he might go next. Where, in your opinion, do you think is his best fit?
Maybe it's the most obvious, but you have to look at the Patriots, right? I mean, it's just like this. I think as soon as the Vrabel thing came out, and we're all waiting for the Belichick thing to end, which it eventually did, that it was hard not to connect those dots because Robert Kraft obviously knows Mike Vrabel from his playing days there in terms of culture, all those things. And he's been a successful head coach. Obviously with the Titans, they overachieved most of those years he was there. They did not have the most talented teams, and they still found ways to have winning records, to pull off upsets, to get to the playoffs, all those things. So I think that one would make a lot of sense to me. The Chargers' job is like still one of the most interesting, to me. If Vrabel could go there and just kind of that losing culture that they've had there where everything's going to go wrong, and he could like just sort of bring a new message, a new confidence, a new leadership. And obviously we know the Titans defenses weren't great under him, but still like they played with a physicality. They played hard. The numbers didn't always show it. They weren't always the most talented, but that would be someone I would look at if I were the Chargers. I mean, Vrabel never had a quarterback as good as Justin Herbert in Tennessee. So you give him a quarterback like that, you say, hey, we want you to kind of run your whole program here. Like that could be a partnership that works for a lot of years to come. So I think that potential fit is interesting to me as well.
And do you think Bill Belichick, obviously he's no longer with the Patriots, do you think his coaching style, his relationship with players, do you think he's outdated? Because in my opinion, Bill's been coaching for over 45 years. The game has long changed since then. And in my opinion, I see it hard, him going to another team where, one, he doesn't have control. Two, he doesn't try and be the general manager and the head coach. I just feel like if he does go anywhere, they're going to have to give up a lot of control, and a lot of players are going to have to. I think he walks in the room and players kind of, they sit in their shells and they can't be themselves. And I just feel like it's going to be tough for him to, I want to say find another team, because he's Bill Belichick. He's done it all. He's the greatest coach of all time. But I feel like he's not able to adapt to today's coaching styles and times. And I don't know if that means he should probably go upstairs, retire. What's your take on Bill and his coaching style, maybe where he ends up?
Yeah, I think I lean a little bit more towards you, and it's not just the things you mentioned, although those are relevant. I mean, he's had time since, like, it's been 4 years since Tom Brady left, and look at what their offenses looked like. Like, it's gotten progressively worse. Like, you have to have somebody who's going to run the offensive side of the ball, who's going to be your offensive coordinator. How are you going to come up with a scheme where if you don't have the greatest quarterback of all time, you're still able to put up points? Like, he just hasn't proven that he's able to do that. I mean, his coaching decisions on that side of the ball have been a disaster. Now, maybe it's as simple as he just goes back to Josh McDaniels. I can certainly see that, but that would be concerning to me. I mean, the last 2 years, they have been a well-coached team. I know people like to point to his defenses have been good. There's no doubt about it. He can still coach on that side of the ball. But the last 2 years, I mean, I think there's like 3 teams in the NFL that have won fewer games than the New England Patriots. Their special teams have been bad. They've had penalties. They haven't been able to figure out the offense. And so I wouldn't, if I were a team, I wouldn't be looking to go ahead and say, hey, let's, make him this highly paid coach and he's going to solve all our problems. Like, you're not getting the Bill Belichick from 10 years ago. Like you said, the game has changed. He's changed. It's a different guy. Now, I do think it's interesting, George, like sometimes when something like this happens, people do change. Like, I do wonder if he goes somewhere else and he says, you know what? I can let the players be a little more free and be themselves a little bit more. This is my last stop. These are my last years as a coach. I know it's hard for us to imagine, but hey, you never know. Like, Tom Brady was a different guy in Tampa than he was in New England. Now, part of that might have had to do with Belichick, obviously, but sometimes when you have a big life change like that, your perspective changes a little bit. So maybe not likely, but I won't rule it out completely.
I'll be very shocked if that does happen, I'll tell you that. All right, a couple more things before we close out the show. Is there any particular team who have a losing record for this season, obviously didn't make it to the playoffs, who you think can turn it around and have a winning record next season?
Yeah, you asked me this question before we came on, and I was trying to look at the standings here really quickly. I don't want to fall into this trap again, George, but I'm looking at that Los Angeles Chargers team and wondering at 5-12, facing a last place schedule next year with a new coach, that certainly could be a team that turns it around pretty, maybe not be a Super Bowl contender, obviously, but could that be a team that finishes with 10 wins next year and makes the playoffs? So that's the one that is sticking out to me quite a bit. The Vikings, I'm looking at them a little bit.
That's the other team that I had. Yeah.
Those are the two. Okay, there you go. So if they get Kirk Cousins back, or even if they make another move at quarterback, I mean, quarterback was what really held them back this year. They've got a good offensive line, at least tackle. They've got a great wide receivers, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and Brian Flores did a great job with their defense. So could they win 9 or 10 games next year? Yeah, I could definitely see that.
All right. Sheil, it's crunch time before we close the show, and you know what that means. Super Bowl is not far away. It's always difficult to try and give you predictions, although most people are kind of giving the same predictions, and that's the Ravens and the 49ers. But what's your early Super Bowl prediction?
Yeah, we did a piece on theringer.com where everyone had to put their official picks on the record. And I do think the Ravens and 49ers are worthy teams. They both look like, pretty clearly the best teams in each of their conferences. So if that happens, that wouldn't surprise me. But with predictions, I don't like to go chalk, George. No one's going to remember if I pick the Ravens and the 49ers. So I decided to switch it up a little bit. And I went with the Bills. And the Bills are a high variance team. They could lose this weekend to the Steelers, and none of us would be like totally shocked. I mean, they almost lost to Easton Stick. What was it, 2-3 weeks ago? So They can lose to anybody. They can beat anybody. I do think their A game is good enough where, like, even if the Chiefs are playing really well, even if the Ravens are playing really well, if the Bills have their A game on that specific day, they can beat those teams. So can they do it 4 times in a row, which I guess is what it would take to get out of the AFC and then win the Super Bowl? Probably not. I think that's probably a stretch, but I've been telling people all season long, don't give up on this Bills team yet. Mm-hmm. Don't give up on this Bills team yet. And sometimes when a team wins the Super Bowl and breaks a drought, they've never won a Super Bowl. It has to happen in this really, really weird, unexpected way when no one's picking up kind of thing. So I've got the Bills beating the 49ers in the Super Bowl. That's, I guess, my official prediction.
I love that. I always say it's not how you start, it's how you finish, and the Bills are hot right now. It's not pretty, it's not cute. Josh Allen has to throw picks, but they're winning games. And shout out to Joe Brady, because that offense has been clicking since he took over from Ken Dorsey. Well, that's the end of the show. Sheil, I appreciate you for coming on. A great episode. This is a very exciting part of this season. It's crunch time where every play matters, every game matters, and if you don't win, you're going home. So once again, it's been Sheil here from The Ringer. Make sure you check out their episodes. Sheil, Ben, The Ringer NFL, some great content for you to take in. And there's also video content as well, both on the podcast platform and on YouTube. So go and check that out because you won't miss it. And there's one that's just dropped, the Philly special, which is all about Philly and the Buccaneers game. We've touched on it slightly today. But I've been George from Georgeonsports. I hope you guys enjoy Super Wildcard weekend here with Sheil from The Ringer, and we'll see you on the next episode.